are now on ASNEM, hard to pronounce, Advanced Synchrotron Network for Advanced, African Synchrotron Network for Advanced Energy Materials.
Thank you, Simon. Can you hear me clearly now?
We hear you and see your slides.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank the AFLS Organising Committee for the opportunity to speak today. As you heard, I'm Marcus Newton, and I'm leading the ASNEM project, the African Synchrotron Network for Advanced Energy Materials.
Can we also see your video while you speak, Marcus? Is it possible?
Yep, just a moment, I'll see if it works. Just bear with me. I hope you can see me. Can you see me now? Is it working?
Yes, we see you. Thank you. Great.
Wonderful. Okay, that's good. Right, so yes, so I'm heading the ASNEM project. I'm also head of the Coherent X-ray Science Group in the Physics and Astronomy Department at the University of Southampton in the UK. So today I want to introduce the ASNEM project, some of the activities that the project has been involved in, and how this could contribute to a Pan-African light source. And I'll also briefly cover some of the aspects of my research, which relates to the training, the training activities of the ASNEM project. Before I begin, I just want to thank and acknowledge the team members who have contributed to this work. So we have George Clerk at Bucks University in the UK, Simon Connell, who we've heard from already at the University of Johannesburg, Professor Julius Mabora, who we collaborate with at the University of Nairobi, Prosper Gamboziza at Max Planck Institute for Solid State Research, Chris Amazuvi at the University of Mines, and Mervyn and Alex, who are based at Wits University in South Africa. Okay, so the background is that energy consumption, of course, is only increasing, but sources of energy are becoming more diverse and use habits are changing rapidly. Okay, so we need new and novel materials, of course, hold the potential for more effective generation and consumption of energy. And so we want to unlock the secrets of materials, novel materials, and ultimately utilize them for improving our living standards, all the living standards on the continent. And that's where a synchrotron can come in. So synchrotron X-rays can provide insights or new insights into materials and reveal detailed properties of materials that aren't necessarily revealed via other means. And so what is the aim of the ASNEM project? The aim is to build capacity in synchrotron communities amongst African, not just sub-Saharan, I should say, but African research teams, and to develop sustainable partnerships. So we're quite keen on doing that. This occurs via knowledge exchange through co-creation. I'll talk about these projects very soon. I'm hosting workshops, which we have done so far, related to synchrotron science on the continent. And what's very unique about this project is that we're very interested in anthropological studies as well, going along with all the other activities related to synchrotron science, because we want to understand the needs of communities and expectations, and also gain a better understanding of the potential user base of the facility. So how is the ASNEM project funded? So it's funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund, which is a £1.5 billion fund created by the UK government, and it enables research that is oriented towards real-world challenges. So that's its purpose, and it allows us to work with developing countries, but in a slightly different way from previous activities, in that we want to do things with partners, not just for or to them. And so it's very much about co-creation. And so if we have a look at this diagram here, you can see the eligible countries. So it funds lower to middle income countries, and those are defined by the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And you can see there's quite a wide range of potential funding partners that can be funded, but we focus primarily on the African continent in this particular project. So what is our process and how does it work? Well, we start with meetings. So we've met many of our partners, and I'll discuss those very soon. So it's very important, I think, to have a ground level sort of meeting, a grassroots approach to start off with, planning what the projects will be, what is relevant to that particular region, designing and developing go hand in hand. So thinking about what resources we have to actually conduct the research and what do we need and what can we actually develop, and then connecting, doing the actual research, connecting with those users, and ultimately deploying whatever we actually develop. And so we want to always demonstrate a clear path to impact, and then therefore transfer the knowledge to that country. So here are some examples of what we've actually done. So we focused on on energy harvesting, so energy harvesting devices, solar cell devices as well, piezoelectric and triboelectric devices, which are the expertise of my group, metal organic frameworks for storing hydrogen, and battery technologies. So those are the main areas that we're interested in. So now I'll talk a bit more and drill down into what we've actually done. And so we are looking at specific materials for low cost and highly efficient solar cells. So using, for example, perovskite materials as opposed to just silicon or other materials that are highly costly or difficult to manufacture. Hybrid piezoelectric vibrational energy harvesting, which is quite a relatively novel and new field for harvesting energy on the go, useful for mobile power and remote sensing. And we've made quite significant strides on our anthropological study, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Training as well, so training and expertise development. So we are very keen to get involved. We've heard previous talks about the need for training and the challenges that are presented with lack of training. And so we're quite keen to help to fill this gap with our training activities. So how does the energy harvesting aspect work? And so this is a collaboration with the University of Nairobi, with Professor Mabora, and there is a joint PhD student with this project as well. And so this essentially allows us to harvest energy from respiration, housekeeping, so moving, general motion. And as you can see on the right-hand side, the amount of energy you can accrue from each of these is shown, hiking and walking. And so essentially these devices work by using nanostructured crystals that are grown in a lab, and they're assembled in such a way that we can harvest energy from the piezoelectric and triboelectric effect. And so the aim is to have a joint student with the University of Nairobi to manufacture these devices and then test them in the field and see how much energy they can generate, and if they can power, for example, mobile phones or remote diagnostics for agriculture, for example, so testing the powering devices that test the environment, the local environment, and perhaps even remote testing for disease or glucose testing, which is sometimes difficult to do on the go. And so that's the aim for this particular project. Also, I'd like to talk about some of the training activities that we've done. So we've heard a talk by Thierry about XTech Lab. That was a brilliant talk. I was particularly thrilled to hear that some of the training session is actually occurring online. And so that's very wonderful to hear that the students are actually here listening to this talk in real time. And so that's wonderful. So we're very keen we have teamed up with XTech Lab, very keen to get involved in their training and local skills development. As Simon mentioned, the number of scientists we have per million in Africa is significantly lower than it is in Europe. It's orders of magnitude lower. And so that's really important to fill this. And so what we're very keen on doing here is training. We were asked to train, rather, the research manager of XTech Labs in my lab. So in my lab, there are several pieces of equipment that are useful for this. So single crystal diffraction, it's possible powder diffraction, microtomography, X-ray fluorescence, and coherent imaging, which is what I specialize in. And so it's not just training in a theoretical sense, but we're also keen to train in a practical sense, which means there's bilateral exchange, individuals coming along to our lab and actually doing experiments in my lab, actually using equipment, actually analyzing data with the software, and also coming along to Synchrotron. So I have a very strong collaboration with the Diamond Light Source. And so individuals that do come along through this bilateral exchange program would actually also attend synchrotron experiments at the Diamond Light Source, get involved in that practically, and also the data analysis. And so that's very exciting. Most of the techniques that I mentioned just a moment ago, I think you will be familiar with, but not many of you will be familiar with the coherent diffraction imaging technique. So I'm just going to explain that very briefly to you through a number of slides, and I hope I have enough time to do that still. And so how does this work? This is a synchrotron technique, so you do need a synchrotron to do this. It's not possible without a synchrotron so far. So we have coherent X-rays from the synchrotron, and we use those coherent X-rays to illuminate a very small crystal, a nanocrystal typically. And because of the coherence, and this is particularly important for fourth generation synchrotron facilities, we can produce an interference pattern in what we call the far field, or the Fraunhofer limit. And in this image contains all of the information about the atomic positions in the crystal. And so if we use computational means, we can back propagate to the image plane and then reconstruct the actual crystal. And not only do we reconstruct the morphology, we can reconstruct all of the positions within the crystal with angstrom sensitivity and nanometer resolution. And so how does this actually work? What's the procedure? This slide illustrates that. And so we have a diffraction pattern, a three-dimensional diffraction pattern that we actually obtain. It's not quite the same as tomography, but it shares similar characteristics. We use computational means to reconstruct this, and then we obtain the final crystal, as you can see on the right-hand side. And that crystal is around 200 nanometers in size. The color there is actually quantitative, so it tells us how the atoms have moved from their equilibrium position. So we have blue representing tensile strain, and red representing compressive strain, and the green representing equilibrium phases. And therefore we can actually take slices of this and find out how the atoms are moved or have moved from their equilibrium position. And so the next slide shows another crystal where the same procedure was formed. This is the reconstruction. This crystal is about 500 nanometers in height. And you can see we can peel away from the surface and look inside. And that's extremely useful. So if you want to look at small crystals for catalysis, for battery materials, you want to understand what's actually happening in these clusters, this is the technique that can allow you to understand that and to see inside of the material. Okay, so it's very useful. And so we offer training in this technique amongst other techniques which are more conventional and well understood. Okay, so I also want to talk about a survey that we're doing as well. So I mentioned an anthropological study, and this is where we have a slightly different dimension to our project than other projects which are focused on perhaps biology specifically or energy, as we are as well. And we want to understand our survey helps us to understand or determine the social and economic impact that a sovereign synchrotron or Pan-African synchrotron might have. And so we've set up this survey. You can see the link below. Please visit this and fill out the survey, send it to others as well. We're also sending this to synchrotron directors as well. And we're going to accrue this information and try to use this to inform how to go forward and how the African synchrotron might impact local communities and of course the user base that is being developed and we're learning about as we go forward. Okay, it can also help with collaborative and training activities that we are planning as well. Okay, and with that I'll conclude, and also by mentioning that we have a workshop as well. So we had a virtual workshop earlier in the year, but we also have another workshop, the ASDEM 2020 workshop, which will be next year, which will be held next year in June in South Africa, COVID allowing, of course. And so do have a look at our website and you can sign up to this and hopefully attend. Okay, and with that, I'll end and hand back to the session chair.
Well, I must say one gets goosebumps when one sees the quality of the science. And I think we do see that Africa had passed that threshold of excellence to have its own synchrotron. We really do see that. I see other people in the chat also see this, and it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. And best wishes for the progress on ASNIM. We will as before, pick up the questions afterwards if we can. And so thank you very much, Marcus. I want to call Nico Fisher to please